For decades, Curly Howard has stood as one of the most beloved figures in American comedy. His wide-eyed innocence, explosive energy, and unforgettable nyuk made him an icon of the Three Stooges. Yet behind the scenes, the man responsible for some of the greatest laughs in film history endured a life marked by pain, illness, and exploitation, much of it deliberately concealed by Columbia Pictures. Today, the truth about Curly Howard finally comes into focus, revealing a heartbreaking story that sharply contrasts with the joyful chaos he brought to the screen. From serious medical problems ignored by the studio to undiagnosed mental health struggles, heavy drinking, and a devastating decline, Curly's real life bears little resemblance to the carefree clown audiences adored. What follows uncovers the hidden suffering behind those legendary routines and exposes how the studio system allowed a vulnerable performer to deteriorate while millions laughed, unaware of the personal cost behind the comedy. The divide between Curly's public persona and his private reality represents one of Hollywood's most effective illusions. While filmgoers saw a seemingly unstoppable whirlwind of physical comedy, the man behind the act was slowly breaking down. Columbia Pictures, eager to protect their most valuable comedic asset, built an elaborate facade to disguise his worsening condition and maintain a relentless production schedule that pushed him far beyond safe limits. By looking at 5 key areas of Curly's life, we can finally understand the tragic story that remained hidden for generations, a story of a man who gave everything he had until there was nothing left. First, Curly's health collapsed much earlier than people realize. While fans associate his downfall with the 1946 stroke, the truth is that his physical problems began nearly a decade earlier. In his early 30s, Curly was already battling dangerously high blood pressure. Significant weight fluctuations, chronic fatigue, and moments of near collapse on set. These were not mild or occasional issues, they were serious medical concerns that required long-term care. Instead, Columbia ignored every warning sign. Even as Curly struggled to walk between takes, the studio kept him working at a punishing pace of 8 shorts a year. Camera techniques, lighting tricks, and strategic editing hid the decline from the public. Crew members later recalled seeing Curly soak through costumes with sweat, gasp for breath, and struggle to deliver lines without slurring. Yet nothing changed. His deteriorating health played out behind the scenes while audiences remained blissfully unaware. By the early 1940s, the decline was undeniable to those around him. Watching the Stooges shorts chronologically makes the progression clear: slower reactions, heavier movement, and a voice that occasionally thickened under the strain. Directors compensated by adjusting scenes and giving Mo and Larry more of the heavy lifting. Some of the most famous shorts, ones still considered comedy gold today, were filmed while Curly was already a very sick man. The studio's refusal to slow down or rework the schedule contributed directly to the devastation that followed. Second, the stroke that ended Curly's career came shockingly early. In May 1946, at only 42 years old, Curly suffered a massive stroke on the set of Half-Wits Holiday. The warning signs were unmistakable: slurred speech, facial drooping, inability to focus, yet production continued without immediate medical attention. Columbia provided no statement, no explanation to fans, and no tribute to one of their biggest stars. They simply replaced him with his brother Shemp and moved on. Curly, meanwhile, entered a long and painful decline. The stroke left him partially paralyzed and struggling to speak, effectively eliminating any hope of returning to comedy. His cameo in Hold That Lion showed a drastically changed man, partially bald, physically weakened, and clearly not the performer he once was. The abrupt nature of his exit, combined with Columbia's silence, illustrates how little value the studio placed on his well-being. Third, Curly likely suffered from undiagnosed mental illness. Accounts from family and colleagues describe dramatic mood swings, periods of exuberant, almost frantic energy followed by deep withdrawal and sadness. His loved ones suspected depression or bipolar disorder long before such conditions were widely understood. The demands of his role intensified the problem. Even on his darkest days, Curly was expected to deliver non-stop energy and joy on screen. Mo often guided him through scenes when he was mentally struggling, offering cues and emotional support that the studio never provided. At a time when mental health carried enormous stigma, Curly had no access to meaningful treatment. Instead, he pushed through psychological pain while performing one of the most physically demanding comedic roles in Hollywood. Fourth, Curly's alcoholism was a growing crisis that the studio actively concealed. What began as casual drinking eventually escalated into a dependency that affected both his health and his performance. As his physical and emotional struggles worsened, alcohol became a form of self-medication. Crew members remembered him arriving on set intoxicated, slurring his lines or unable to hit his marks. Rather than intervene, Columbia adjusted scenes around him and kept filming. Publicly, they maintained the image of Curly as a lovable prankster whose off-screen personality matched his character. Privately, they let him spiral. His drinking intensified his blood pressure issues and contributed significantly to the stroke that shattered his life. The studio's refusal to address his addiction is one of the most troubling aspects of his story. Fifth, Curly's final years were a tragedy almost no one talks about. After his first stroke, he struggled through a mix of partial recovery and ongoing decline. Columbia offered almost no financial support for his treatment, leaving his family to shoulder the burden. Curly clung to the hope of returning to work, but the reality of his condition made that impossible. In 1948, a second major stroke caused severe and permanent damage, forcing him into nursing homes and hospitals where he spent the rest of his life. His cognitive abilities deteriorated, and he often could not recognize family members. Mo visited frequently, offering support and care, but even he witnessed his younger brother slipping away. By late 1951, Curly was bedridden, unable to communicate, and completely dependent on institutional care. He died in January 1952 at just 48 years old. Columbia's public acknowledgement was a short statement: no tribute, no recognition, no accountability. Taken together, these hidden truths reveal the steep cost of Curly Howard's comedic brilliance. He was pushed through years of declining health, emotional turmoil, and untreated addiction, all while the studio continued profiting from his work. The laughter he brought millions was genuine, but so was the suffering behind it. Columbia Pictures prioritized profit over humanity, exploiting a vulnerable man until his body and mind could no longer endure. Understanding Curly's full story doesn't diminish his legacy, it deepens it. The next time you enjoy one of his classic routines, remember the man behind the laughter, a gifted performer who deserved compassion, protection, and dignity, and received almost none of it.